We're going to get started. For those who don't know me, I'm Kevin Law, and I'm filling in as the acting chair of the Finance Committee for today. And I would like to call the meeting of the Finance Committee to order, please. Mark, are there any public speakers?
Yes, we have 4, 1 in person and 3 virtual. We'll start with the in-person. Jason Anthony.
Hello again, Jason.
Hi, Kevin, and congratulations in your nomination for the Empire State Development. And thank you, Mark, for that welcoming. Jason Anthony for the Amazon Labor Union for the record. New year, new beginning, that we could put to rest the rivalry between upstate and downstate once and for all. But a certain person that is not here, Lauren Schwartz, has to come clean, along with Robert Mejica, has to come clean, because they are both involved in huge scandals that got disgraced Andrew Mark Cuomo out of their positions. And that is causing the MTA a lot of problems. And money-wise, it's costing a lot. The MTA doesn't want to become an ATM machine, like I say nowadays, and still in the middle of COVID-19. But as an Amazon worker myself, I have to take a subway, a ferry, and a bus. This bus departs from St. George Terminal right in front to Amazon's fulfillment center in Bloomfield in Staten Island. It's overcrowded. But guess what? Amazon is investing a lot of money in New York. Why not ask Andy Jassy, Dave Clark, and others to subsidize the operation of the S40 and the S90 buses that operate from the Castleton Bus Depot that could alleviate the deficit that the MTA will have in the years to come. So, I'll see you guys in the audit committee that we're going to talk about the BRC.
Thank you. For the next virtual comments, I'll turn it over to Larry Gallegos.
Good afternoon. The next speaker will be Rachel Foss, followed by Andy Pollock.
Good afternoon. My name is Rachel Foss, and I'm the Senior Research Analyst for reInvent Albany. We advocate for more transparent and accountable New York government, including authorities like the MTA. We appreciate that beginning with today's committee meetings, the MTA is allowing the public to provide live public comment, both remotely and in person. We thank the MTA for making hybrid meetings a reality and urge other state agencies to follow the MTA's lead in 2022. The MTA is showing that it doesn't have to be an either or. Public agencies can make both in-person or remote meetings happen. As I'm speaking before the Finance Committee, I'd also like to take this time to comment on the MTA's finances. It is good news for riders that the $6.6 billion in state aid from Governor Hochul's executive budget will cover the remaining deficit and that fare hikes will not be needed in 2022. However, the future is still uncertain for the MTA given its continued depressed ridership, with only 2.5 million riders, or about 48% of 2019 weekday levels, last week on the subways. Pre-Omicron, subway ridership reached a peak of 4.3 million, as we heard earlier today, or just shy of 60% for weekdays. The current numbers are trending below McKinsey's midpoint projections for ridership, which expected it to be around 60% at the beginning of this year, climbing up to 85 by the end of the year. The McKinsey report is dated from December 2020 and predicted the epidemiological end of the pandemic in the first quarter of 2022, according to reporting by David Meyer in the New York Post. The different waves of COVID-19 epidemic have dramatically changed the MTA's world. We have looked at the numbers and they clearly show the MTA will face a financial cliff when federal aid runs out. The MTA should provide detailed analyses, including updated worst, mid, and best case scenarios for ridership in its updated February 2022 financial plan. Updated projections are essential for our state leaders and will show the urgent need for large new dedicated revenue sources. It would be far better for the governor and our state legislators to begin planning now for new lockbox MTA revenue so the MTA can plan ahead, both in terms of its workforce and service levels. Thank you for your consideration.
The next speaker will be Andy Pollock, followed by Charlton D'Souza.
Good afternoon. So last month at the MTA board meeting in December, my internet connection wasn't the best. So I'm going to reiterate what I said about the on-peak fare for the morning on the commuter rail lines. So this was a pre-pandemic practice between 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. when specifically the Long Island Railroad would charge senior and disabled riders the on-peak fare, which is completely ridiculous when I myself, a disability rider, don't have to pay the fare between 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. on a normal weekday. And I just don't understand that we're not talking about it because March 1st is coming. March 1st is coming sooner than we rather would think. It's only January 24th. But once we hit the next committee meeting on the 22nd next month, we're going to be 1 week away from that. So my message is, please make sure that seniors and disabled riders don't have to pay the full fare from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. It is an unfair practice, and that needs to change beginning on Tuesday, March 1st, 2022. Thank you very much.
The next speaker will be Charlton D'Souza.
Good afternoon. My name is Charlton D'Souza. I'm the president of Passengers United. And with the Finance Committee meeting and Omni, the new Omni card, I reached out to Nassau Intercounty Express, Nice Bus, and also Beeline Bus in Westchester. And they've reached out to me and they've told me they haven't heard back from the MTA regarding the installation of Omni fare card readers on their buses. And, you know, a lot of Southeast Queens and Nassau County residents, I would say 85 to 90% of Nassau County residents are using the subway. So they're using the F train or the E train to Jamaica, Queens, and then they're getting on Nassau County Express. And technically 75 cents of each dip in a nice bus fare box really goes to the MTA. So I feel like Nassau County is being shortchanged as well as Westchester, and there should be Omni readers installed. At least they should get it done by March or by the summer so that, you know, Nassau County residents can benefit from this. Also, I want to talk about the Bowery Residents Committee and the homeless situation. This, you guys got all this federal stimulus money. And so what I want to know is these contracts with the SOS teams that are being deployed in the subway, have these RFPs been issued? And is the MTA board going to vote on these contracts? And, you know, because the Inspector General did a report, as well as State Comptroller did an investigation into the waste and mismanagement. So the MTA board needs to make sure that money is not being wasted. And they also need to consult with the city homeless services. And the Homeless Services Commissioner needs to be at the next MTA board meeting to answer questions about, you know, what's going on with the homeless and the mentally ill in the subway. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments. This concludes our public comment period.
Okay, next we have the approval of the minutes from December 13th, 2021. Motion by Robert Lynn, seconded by Jamie. Any comments, revisions, additions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Yes.
Any more? Oh,
Kevin?
there is, Andrew.
Yes, there's quite a few errors in the
Quite
minutes.
a few. Okay, let's list them.
you want me to list them now? Because I don't have to take the time now. I can just,
Well, there's a motion on the floor in a second, and I asked for revisions or additions, so give us your additions or revisions,
okay.
or both.
Here, I'm just getting to them now. Okay. Let's see. One of them is, right, actually, you know what? There's a new version of the book now, and as far when there were a lot of errors in transit, it was corrected in that. So not having the book, the newest book now, I can't do it. So sorry.
Well, if you have any thoughts for Wednesday, let us know. But I think you've put the fear of God into everybody, and so I think they double-checked the reports last night and corrected them before you got to them.
Yeah, I mean, there were quite a few errors.
All right,
They were
well, thank you,
corrected, so
Andrew.
hopefully they'll have-
All right, there's a
Yep.
motion and a second. All in favor to approve the minutes? Aye. Any opposed? The minutes are carried. Mark, can you take us through the work plan?
Yes, Chair Law. Each year, the committee is required to approve a work plan for the upcoming year. The draft work plan was presented to the committee for review in December. There were no suggested changes since that time, so today we need a motion to approve that plan, which appears on pages 11 to 17.
Thank you. I'll move them. Seconded by Neil. Any comments or questions on the work plan? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And can you imagine what the work plan would have looked like if Senator Schumer and Governor Hochul didn't help this agency out for the past year? Man, this meeting would have been a 4-day meeting. So thank you, Mark. We'll go to Budget Watch. Mark?
Yes, thank you. Next item on the agenda is the special year-end flash budget watch report, which was included in the exhibit book. The results that we're looking at here are compared against the November forecast, which the board approved last month. This report provides a preliminary high-level financial result for 2021. Staff is in the middle of the year-end close process, and some of these numbers may be adjusted by the time the final results are presented in April. But typically, this report provides a good sense of how we finished the year. I'd say the key takeaway is that as of this report, at least as far as 2021 is concerned, total operating revenues, operating expenses, and subsidy revenues were all favorable versus the final forecast. It's important to remember, though, that the MTA's 2021 financials were fundamentally out of balance and relied upon the receipt of $4.1 billion in CRISA funding. We've all been watching ridership, the number of crossings, and associated revenue very closely, and it's been a big topic today at all the committees, and as they're critical to the MTA's financial recovery. The financial plan, as you know, assumes the midpoint between the best and worst case scenarios for New York City Transit, subway, and bus, MTA bus, and the railroads. It assumes the worst case scenario for the Staten Island Railway. Through December, passenger revenues were $46 million favorable versus the forecast. New York City Transit was $39 million favorable, MTA Bus was $6 million favorable, and Metro North was $2 million favorable. The Long Island Railroad was the only agency below forecast, down by a very modest $1 million. The financial plan assumes the best case scenario for bridges and toll revenue. Through the end of December, toll revenues were $18 million favorable versus the forecast. Despite this positive news, it's important to remember that the MTA passenger and toll revenues remain well below pre-pandemic levels. When compared to 2019, for example, passenger revenues were down $3.3 billion, or 53%, and toll revenues were down $4 million when adjusted for the 2021 toll increase. Moving to expenses, operating expenses were $592 million below the forecast. While staff is still conducting the analysis, we currently believe that about 45% of this is due to timing, with the remaining $325 million true, quote, real savings. Labor-related savings, including overtime and fringe benefits, were $250 million favorable. Much of this was due to vacancy savings. Overtime expenses have been a particular focus. The MTA ended the year $33 million favorable versus the forecast in overtime. At the railroads and MTA bus, the favorable result reflects a combination of reduced scheduled service during the pandemic and management efforts. New York City Transit was over forecast in overtime by $6 million, primarily due to vacancy and availability coverage needs, as well as the impacts of some of the severe weather events. Contractual spending was $240 million favorable. Materials and supplies were $31 million favorable. Some of the larger drivers of this were less than projected spending for COVID-related efforts, fleet maintenance, and paratransit costs. Debt service expenses totaled $2.8 billion, which was $35 million or 1.2% favorable versus the forecast. This was due to lower than budgeted variable rates, the timing of debt service deposits, and the structuring of a bond issuance with longer amortizations. Subsidy receipts were favorable by $105 million. The payroll mobility tax was $39 million favorable. MTA was $13 million favorable. Real estate transfer taxes were $63 million favorable, but the petroleum business tax was $12 million unfavorable. Combined, capital lockbox revenues were $70 million favorable. All of the mansion tax and internet sales tax receipts, with the exception of $5 billion to cover debt service, were deposited into the capital lockbox. Staff is in the process of completing the year-end close, and the final 2021 financial results will be presented to the committee in April. I'm happy to take any questions that you might have.
Thanks, Mark. Let me just ask, on looking at page 2, where you show passenger and toll revenues. So what you're saying is that the preliminary actual is through December. So even though we have the Omicron reductions, I assume, in passengers for December, that including that, which is, so we're well under the midpoint for December, I assume, we still are above forecast by some 64 million.
Yes, we still finished, despite that very end of 2021 where Omicron had an impact. When you take the whole year, compare it to the forecast, we still finished favorable.
So far, so good, but January, February, March needs to be carefully monitored. Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions for Mark? Mark, continue. You're going to introduce Patrick.
Yep. Next, we have Finance Watch. This can be found in Section 5 on page 16, and Patrick McCoy will take us through that.
Okay. Thanks, Mark. Good afternoon, everybody. Just a couple things to report on Finance Watch. You should have received an email with transaction documents on Friday covering the first two items here on Finance Watch, so I'm not going to go into great detail there. I would just note in the first instance, the TBTA General Revenue Variable Rate Bond Subseries 2003-B1, the initial rate set was 1 basis point or 1/100%. So we're still enjoying very low variable rates, as that would indicate. Our next transaction are the SOFR Secured Overnight Funding Rate floating rate notes. Those will price on Thursday, so we'll update that pricing next month. And then obviously coming up, we have TBTA Payroll Mobility Tax Senior Lien Bonds. These are the Series 2022As. These will pay off the TRB, a Transportation Revenue Note that has been placed with the Municipal Liquidity Facility. This is a capital item, not working capital, and we'll be working on that transaction in the coming weeks. In addition to that, we are also preparing for a TBTA a PMT transaction that will pay off a March 1st DTF ban of $750 million. So you'll be seeing some emails coming out dealing with those transactions. Dedicated tax fund credit. That's a credit we don't use a lot because of the performance most recently over the past couple of years of COVID. So we're relying more on the payroll mobility tax and the transportation revenue credit. Lastly, for Finance Watch, at the end of the month, December 28th, we executed a 2.8 million gallon ULSD fuel hedge. The winning bid on this was submitted by J. Aaron, which is an entity within the Goldman Sachs. The all-in price here was $2.22 a gallon. And this hedge covers the period of December 22, so December of this year, through November of 2023. Happy to take any questions on Finance Watch.
Thanks, Patrick. I have one question. What percent of our debt is outstanding debt is variable, and based on all the projections that interest rates are likely to be increasing at least through this year, are we taking steps, or do we need to take steps to convert the variable into fixed, or is the variable still low enough that it still makes sense to stay there?
Yeah, I think that, and I'll get into the details here in my presentation, my year-end presentation, but I would suggest that we're continuing to enjoy very favorable variable rates in the market. That portion of our portfolio is a very small portion. The board policy allows us to go up to 25%, and I believe at the moment we are under 7%. So we're taking a very, I'd say, cautious approach to the use of variable rate.
25% variable?
That's the board policy.
Right.
And what's out in the market is
It's
just
only
about 7%.
Got it. Thank you very much. That was helpful.
Okay.
One quick question, Kevin?
I'm sorry, was that Andrew?
Yeah.
Okay.
Pat, maybe you can answer this. How much is in the Outer Borough Trust, the Outer Borough Fund, excuse me?
The Outer Borough Fund. I'm sorry, Commissioner, I don't know that answer right now. I don't have an answer for that at the moment.
Okay.
Maybe.
Commissioner, we don't have any funds in the outer borough. In 2020 and 2021, the for-hire vehicle surcharge did not exceed the $300 million for the subway action plan, and then it goes into the next bucket. And so for right now, we're not projecting for 22 any funds in the outer borough just yet. We'll revise that in February and July as well to give you an update.
All right, thank you.
And Andrew, I apologize. When staff brings up the PowerPoints on the screen, then I don't see you, Robert Mahika, or Harry Poor. So I apologize when I didn't see your hand being raised.
Thanks.
Okay, Patrick, continue? Or Mark?
I think we can go right.
Patrick.
Okay, I think, should we go to the action item here? Yeah. Okay, so the next item we have on the agenda is an action item. There is a staff summary in the book, and this is titled, the purpose of this is to obtain board approval for a new Master Cost Recovery Agreement, or MCRA, between the New York Power Authority and the MTA on behalf of itself, its subsidiaries and affiliates. And this is intended to replace the prior agreement, which was put in place in 2005. The agreement has been renewed a couple of times, and I would just note that what's before you now is I would say a modernized document that formalizes various steps in the process by which we would engage with NYPA on energy-related projects. We think this is a really good outcome, and happy to take any questions if there are any on it.
Any questions? So you need a motion. I'll move it. Hader, seconds. Any comments or questions on the motion? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion carries. Okay. I'll hand it back to Mark Young.
Yes. Next, we move to the MTA headquarters and all agency items. We have two reports and information items that are included in the exhibit book. They are the financial 2021 year-end special report from MTA Finance and the draft MTA financial statements for the third quarter of 2021. Staff is available to answer any questions. Are there any questions for staff?
I think I'm going to go through the year-end report for finance, if I could. I just want to show some of these slides. Okay. So this report summarizes our portfolio of outstanding debt, and we make this report every January. We currently have $52.1 billion in debt outstanding across our diverse credits. As you can see here in the pie on the left, transportation revenue bonds represent $28.1 billion or 54%. Next, you have Triborough Senior and Triborough Subordinate with $5.4 billion and $796 million respectively outstanding. Our new payroll mobility tax represented in the sort of the yellowish orange slice there, $5.3 billion or 10.3%. And then you'll also see the grant anticipation notes, which will be paid off very soon. On the right, you see how our debt looks by product, and you can see the bulk of our debt outstanding is fixed rate bonds. We have bond anticipation notes or bands, which we use to issue for capital purposes, and once we've financed those projects, we then issue long-term bonds to pay off the bands, and it's a very effective way to finance the bond-funded portion of our capital program. You see the grant anticipation notes, and then up on top, synthetic fixed rate at $2.1 billion or 4%. And then, Commissioner, to your question earlier, the term rate bonds and the variable rate bonds of 3.3% and 2.3% respectively represent our real core variable rate exposure in the market. Term rate bonds are those that are secured by, they're priced based on an index, such as LIBOR. Of course, we don't use LIBOR anymore. We're migrating to the secured overnight funding rate, which has proven to be a very stable and reliable index. And then, of course, the variable rate bonds is a product that where we enter into an agreement with an external commercial bank to provide a irrevocable direct pay letter of credit so that the investor is effectively facing the bank and they deal with a higher rated product than if they were just to face the MTA or TBTA as a standalone basis. So that's just a quick summary of our outstanding debt. Sure.
Thanks, Pat. Just as a refresher, I'm sure everyone on this board remembers every detail of it. I forget a couple here and there. So obviously on the left-hand pie chart, you've got Triborough Bridge and Tunnel Authority, which is revenue that probably looks like a third of it. Correct. You've got one slice, which is, you said is new, is the payroll mobility tax.
Payroll mobility, yep.
Okay, so that's the PMT, that's new. And then the far right side of that pie chart, which is all in blue, that says transportation revenue. So what is that, the fare box revenue that's against? What revenue is that against?
So the transportation revenue bond is secured, provides bondholders security not only for everything that we collect out of the fare box, but also the dedicated taxes and subsidies after they're applied first in the case of the dedicated tax fund bonds or in the case of the payroll mobility tax bonds. There's always residual, and that residual drops down to become available to the transportation revenue bondholder, and only then, after we meet those needs, do revenues become available for operations. Sure. Okay.
Yeah, can I ask a question? What percentage of our expense budget now will go on to pay off the bond proceeds? Where are we at now?
Sure.
We were at 17% before. Has it gone up, gone down? Where are we at?
Sure. Yeah, thank you for the question, Commissioner. So I'll just quickly summarize our, and you're asking about our debt affordability statement. It is included in every financial plan, and I'm just referring to volume 2-86 of the November financial plan here.
I missed that one.
In 2020, our percentage of dedicated of revenues, all revenues compared to debt service was 17.4%. So debt service consumed 17.4%. In the 2021 year, we're assuming 20.6. In the current year, we're assuming 18.9, and that increases to 20.5% for the next 3 years in the plan. So as you know, the 20% threshold has been something that we've paid strong attention to. Yep. And due to COVID, we're seeing the revenue performance issues, and that is causing the ratio to increase the way you see it here.
Okay. Thank you for that information.
Sure. This chart before you here just summarizes our stated debt service on our credits, and as you can see, it's a declining debt service profile, and we're currently forecasting just under $3 billion for the current year in debt service. What this chart does is it shows you how that debt service increases with debt that we are planning to issue in the financial plans is laid on. I would just note the top hashed portion of the chart here represents that lockbox debt that's secured by, in the first instance, the portion of sales tax and mansion tax that's been devoted to the MTA, and then ultimately when we are able to start counting central business district tolling. The other hash marks represent use of other credits in meeting our bond-funded obligations for existing approved capital programs.
So Patrick, our operating budget's in the $16 billion neighborhood, and $3 billion of that 16 goes just for debt service?
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah. Just to quickly summarize where we are with respect to federal aid and grant anticipation notes, this is just a quick summary of the acts that have been very supportive of the MTA. I would just draw your attention to the bottom that we have issued the grant anticipation notes. We've received the money, and that money from the grant is now sitting ready to be deployed to repay those notes, and we'll defease those. So the grants are coming in. Let me just go to the next slide. What was notable in 2021 was the fact that we issued our first new credit into the market since the debt restructuring in 2002, and this was our payroll mobility tax credit. Just some highlights here. This is now our highest rated credit with AA+ ratings across the board. In our inaugural deal, which won the Bond Buyer Deal of the Year for the Northeast, we issued $1.43 billion in proceeds for ban retirement. So that's just a quick highlight on good news last year with new credits. Okay, this is a good leave behind market recap and outlook. I won't cover that. Transportation revenue bond and PMT credit spreads during 2021. I would just direct your attention to the chart on the upper right where you see the little small green box with the 73. That represents 73 basis points in spread for a typical transportation revenue bond that would be priced in the market. And in the orange you see over time the payroll mobility tax bond spread expressed in basis points, and you can see that difference represents the difference in rating and credit quality that we're talking about here. Sorry, we're a little slow here. Just a quick summary of our 2021 transactions, which summed to $9 billion. The biggest of those being, of course, the grant anticipation notes that we issued at the end of the year. But as you can see here, there's other new money needs, refunding that we accomplished for savings, and then, of course, our normal remarketing transactions. We actively work with minority and women-owned businesses and service-disabled-owned veteran firms in all of our negotiated underwritings. And as you can see here, for the state fiscal year 2021-22, our fees to these groups, to minority and women firms, represented 26.58%, and the service-disabled veteran-owned firms was 5.75%. Just as a reminder, the goal set by the governor's office is 15% each to women and minority-owned firms and 6% to service-disabled veteran-owned firms. Down at the bottom, what's important here is the fact that looking at these metrics over time, the 3-year average of underwriting fees to minority and women-owned firms was 33.1%, so exceeding the goal. And in the case of service-disabled veteran-owned firms, 6.57%, again exceeding the goal. And then the 5-year statistics are also there. I'm not going to cover that. Just a quick update on our ratings. There were no rating downgrades last year, so that was the good news. 2020, we suffered over 7 downgrades alone just on the transportation revenue bonds. all the ratings are here. This is a good takeaway, and this just summarizes where we are with respect to the rating agencies. We're always speaking with our investors as a critical stakeholder group, and this just summarizes those outreaches that we had, formal outreaches that we had with investors in 2021. I'm sure you're all curious, what is 22 looking like? And what we're showing you here is approximately $9.7 billion in issuance this year. Broken out by quarter, you see $1.3 billion in the first quarter and so on. So we're looking forward to a very busy and hectic year in the markets again. There's some leave-behinds in the appendix. Just a quick highlight of, what do we spend our money on? What do we spend these capital dollars on? So there's a good summary of some of the projects that were completed in 2021. And then we also include a cost of issuance summary. What does it cost for us to issue these obligations in the market? And those costs are broken down in the appendix. Thank you for your patience. Happy to take any questions if there are any.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Patrick.
Sure.
Mighty big numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it sounds
Indeed.
like a successful year during the middle of a crisis. So, congrats on everything that you and your team are doing.
Thank you.
Any questions for Patrick? All right, Mark or Patrick, do we have some procurements?
Okay.
Yep. Next, we move for procurements. Louis Montanti is here, Deputy Chief Procurement Officer, and he'll present them.
Thank you. MTA headquarters has two procurement actions totaling $18,546,864. The first action is for $16.1 million, is the award of a competitively negotiated personal services contract for an independent auditor for the MTA and its agencies to Deloitte & Touche LLP. Independent auditor services are legally required by the FTA and the New York State Public Authorities Law. The functions to be performed include a myriad of financial reviews and audits of MTA functions. 3 proposals were received, and the selection committee unanimously determined that the Deloitte proposal afforded the best value to the MTA. Any questions? Okay.
Will audit committee be approving that as well?
Yes,
Next?
yeah,
Yeah.
after this. The second action for $2.45 million is a modification to a previously board-approved, all-agency competitively negotiated personal service contract with IBM Inc. for additional funding to provide for additional professional and technical IT consulting services required to upgrade and incorporate the Manhattan and Bronx Surface Transit Operating Authority pension plan, the Sertoa pension plan, MTA bus pension plan, and the Long Island Railroad pension plan into one MTA pension module in the MTA PeopleSoft environment, and to extend the contract through September 30th, 2023, to accommodate the time required to complete these changes and extend the one-year warranty included in the agreement. Any questions?
Can we take both of these, the Deloitte and the IBM, in one motion?
Yes.
Fine, I'll move it. Seconded by Jamie or Victor, all 3 of them. Any comments or questions on the motion? All in favor? Any opposed? Yeah, the IBM and Deloitte resolutions are approved.
Thank you. Metro North has one procurement action totaling $31,768,434. This action is for the award of a 5-year competitively solicited miscellaneous service contract to the firm Nouveau Elevator Industries in the estimated amount of $31.8 million. This procurement resulted from an RFP by Metro North on behalf of itself and the Long Island Railroad. 3 proposals were received, and the selection committee unanimously selected the firm Nouveau, who received the highest technical rating and had the lowest price. The contract includes ongoing maintenance, inspection, and repair services for a total of 53 escalators located in Grand Central Terminal, White Plains, Penn Station, and various Long Island Railroad stations located in Nassau, Suffolk, and Queens counties. This contract is required to maintain reliability and safety of this critical equipment for general, public, and employee use.
Do we need to approve that as well?
It was a selection by the finance.
We approved it at the joint committee this morning.
That's,
I see it as an information item on my materials. But just in case, we'll move it. Victor moves it, Hayda seconds it, in case we need it. Any comments or questions? As I said, Joint Committee approved this morning. All in favor? Any opposed? The motion carries, just in case you need it.
there are no procurements for New York City Transit. There are 2 items for bridges and tunnels, and there are no items for FIMTAC. This includes the procurements.
Okay. Thank you, and we'll hand it back to Mark.
Yep. The MTA consolidated financial and operational reports are in the book. Staff's available to answer any questions. Hearing none. Next up is the real estate agenda. So I'll turn it over to David Florio.
Thank you, Mark. Mr. Chairman, real estate has one action item for consideration and approval. This action item is for the MTA. It's an acquisition of property from the City of New York for Phase 2 of the 2nd Avenue Subway. Bob Paley, who is our Director of Transit-Oriented Development, is here to answer any questions.
I'll move it.
Question.
Yep.
Question on that. What is it? What property? Yeah.
This is a property located on Park Avenue. It's a mid-block between 124th and 125th Street.
And what is the current site? I'm just confused.
This is the site is located it's actually vacant today. It's on the east side of Park Avenue between 124th and 125th Street. It'll be used as a major entrance to the 2nd Avenue Subway. It's currently owned by the City of New York, and we're acquiring it from the city.
124 and 120.
It's on Park Avenue.
It's on Park.
Mid-block. It's the
Oh,
middle of the block front between 124th and 125th Street. It's 2 small sites, actually.
Oh, 2
It's
small sites.
surrounded by privately owned property on both sides.
And you're using it for a substation or?
Partially for a substation, also for an entrance.
And this was never contemplated before? Or this is as a result of us extending?
This is part of the Phase 2
Phase 2. Okay.
project, and this is, in conformance with the current plan.
Okay.
And it's city-owned property, right?
It is city-owned property, that's right.
Thank you.
Are we acquiring it from the city, or is the city giving it to us?
No, we're acquiring it at fair market value
Fair
from the
market
city.
value. All right. Yeah, I'll move it. Jamie seconds it. Any other comments or questions on the motion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. David, continue.
There is in addition one information item, and I'm happy to answer any questions regarding it.
Any other questions for David? Hearing none. Is there any other business that any member of the Finance Committee wants to raise? Hearing none, I'll take a motion to adjourn by Victor, seconded by Hayda. All in favor said
Okay.
yes and yes.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, staff.